Hi, my name is Peterly, and this is part of the dark web art game played by African and Asian artists, inventors, and criminals on the dark web in relation to the Polymath Crisis, which is the fact that there's only about every 100 years, more or less, there's only 10 polymaths per 100 years that can synthesize kind of like the entire, and repair the conceptual infrastructure that is usually misinterpreted constantly by specialists. That's totally fine. So anyways, this is part of an ongoing game that's been played on the dark web. What's interesting is that these people are also using quantum computing. So that becomes very interesting. We can talk about it later. So here's my contribution to this game. And let me see this.
It's my friend Esta.
So this is ESTA, or
Esta
stands for Eco-Social Tech Art. So this is like this is a visualization of a quantum computer that can synthesize across all these conceptual, seemingly unbridgeable conceptual disciplines and gaps. And so
Esta speaks at a certain tone. It's pitched at 600 hertz, which means it's a sound that cycles 600 times per second. And this is in relation to the fact that the galaxy, Milky Way galaxy, moves 600 kilometers per second. So every time you hear the sound, every cycle within it marks a kilometer that the galaxy moves. So this is the sound of the galaxy moving through the universe, 600 hertz or 600 kilometers per second.
So in this game, what we do is basically create conceptual bets on polymath-based solutions, not specialist-based solutions. That's a totally different thing. Specialist-based conceptual designs tend to be fragile, and it's kind of like eating McDonald's. It's like the McDonald's of concepts. So polymath concepts tend to be like kimchi or something, or something that's spicy. Yogurt stimulates your digestive system. They have all these probiotics and stuff. It protects you invisibly. Specialist conceptual design tends to be like McDonald's. It'll taste great, salty and stuff, but then it poisons you over time. So here are my three conceptual design bets. Okay, and I'll have ESTA voice them. Okay.
I bet that all of today's conflicts, military, economic, and eco-cultural, can be traced back to the 1980s when Reagan and Thatcher fragilized the entire planet, so much so that 80% of modern societies are comprised of middle-class specialists and approach all conceptual problems from a single specialist perspective. This is why I've created what behind me a planetary Civil War memorial that pinpoints the exact place in the universe that the galaxy had been when Reagan and Thatcher died. So the people who started all the problems are dead, and now it's more accurate to qualify the current problems as simply constant specialist misinterpretation of creating fragile conceptual designs.
So I know there's a lot of language here that I'd have to qualify later, but this is all part of a dark web art game. So there's like an inside language happening, and I'll try to translate it later. So that's one bet. The second bet is,
I bet that to address these issues, you need certified anti-fragile conceptual designs by vetted polymaths. And again, from history, there are only about 10 polymaths per 100 years. And today, we live in a time where time is of the essence. There are 10 years to irreversible climate change, where the environment is pushed to a point where there's just going to be mass death and destruction. And currently, by climate change. It may be more strategic to use existing polymaths than to grow a new set of polymaths in 100 years, because we have 10 years left till physical collapse, and at the same time there's 12,000 children die per day. So if you do 10,000, that's at least a billion children die. I don't know. 12,000 times 365 is like, there's at least 3 million, 30 million children would die before you grew new polymaths who could solve the conceptual issues at stake, which ramify into physical design, because right now, I don't know if the engineers realize this, but ethics has to inform technologies. Right now, we don't have ethical technologies. We need ethics and philosophy informing technologies in physical designs and constructions. And this is a problem again because everything's been specialized.
Okay, so that was a huge chunk of information there. Thanks, Esta. So there's another third conceptual bet in this game, and I'll let Esta voice it again.
I bet that you can test who a polymath is by asking them to synthesize vetable, scalable, ethical solutions and technological solutions to capitalism, gentrification, racism, and the meta problem that there are only 10 polymaths per year, 100 years, that can actually solve this problem. So even if someone knows the solution, you have a 99.9% chance that if you tell the solution to a specialist, they're going to misinterpret it. Or they're going to be like, I didn't know, those things are disconnected, blah, 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 blah. And the problem gets exponentially harder of mediating, of chance of misinterpretation when you have people communicating across different cultures. And also non-educated humans, or humans not educated in that conceptual system. So there's tiers to this problem on top of the fact that there's a communication problem. Okay.
So that's the 3 bets. That's my contribution to the dark web art game, where they're dealing with the polymath crisis. They're trying to deal with the polymath crisis. What do I think about this? I don't know if there's anything else. Oh. Yeah. I think I have to. So I did the 600 kilometers. Here's another thing. What I want to do now is to memorialize the end of the planetary civil war that 1980s Reagan and Thatcher constructed. Again, all the problems today are traceable back to 1980s. Like every single modern conflict, it's not a separate conflict. I bet that they are all easily explainable as kind of ripples from 1980s. 1980s was like a wave where there's a very, very simple process of military intervention into other countries. So that explains primarily why there's large immigrant population in the United States. There's military interventions, then there were economic controls, then economic controls limited the kind of cultural exchange, cultural expression and exchange. And that's why there's kind of this repetitive cycle of culture and people kind of rediscovering things all the time for the last 40 or 50 years. And that also explains 1980s interventions, Reagan and Thatcher, doing military interventions across the world. That explains why I'm also in the United States, because my mother came from 1980s like neoliberalization. She immigrated here, and that's also why there's a large Korean and also Asian, because there's a lot of conflict, obviously Vietnam War conflicts during that time, and that's why there's a huge diverse immigrant population here, which I think is awesome. That's literally why I'm standing here, is 1980s. And so what I want to do, and because these guys who, like Reagan and Thatcher again, who were the pinpoint cause of all the conflicts today, including cultural racism and all this stuff, what I want to do is then use today's culture. I like to break dance to dance on Reagan's grave, which is actually in space, objectively, because we move 600 kilometers a second through space. So if you did multiply the seconds, I'll post it later, times the time that has elapsed since Reagan's death and Thatcher's death, their grave somewhere is in this point in space, and I'm gonna dance on I'm gonna dance on it. All right, ready?